Some words don't comfort, they wound, disguised as praise. They're like petals hiding a trap, phrases that seem to celebrate your strength, but are really meant to remind you of your place, to limit you, to reduce you. After 50, many comments come wrapped in good intentions, but when you listen with an awakened soul, you realize they're not recognition. They're humiliation wrapped in cellophane. Maybe you felt it. They say they admire you, but something in their tone, in their eyes, in the way they say it, leaves a silent wound. Because they're not celebrating who you are. They're pointing out what they no longer expect from you. This video isn't about fighting back with shouts, it's about waking up with wisdom. We're going to uncover 7 compliments that are actually subtle forms of control, minimization, or emotional abandonment. And I can promise you this, the final lesson might completely change the way you set boundaries and hold your dignity without losing your calm. I'm Gabriel, and if you've ever felt like they're applauding you so you won't speak up, this space is for you. Stay until the end. We're not here to please. We're here to wake up. Has anyone ever told you you look great for your age, and instead of feeling happy, something inside you just sank? You didn't say it out loud, but you felt it. That phrase, which sounded kind, left a strange aftertaste. Like behind the compliment, there was a look that didn't truly see you, that boxed you in, that measured you by what you no longer are. This is the first stop on our journey, so let's begin here. You look great for your age. It sounds like a compliment, but it's really a disguised judgment. What many won't say to your face, they throw at you with a smile, wrapped in cellophane so you won't object. Because behind that phrase, there isn't real admiration, there's surprise. Surprise that you still carry presence, that you're still visible, that you haven't crumbled the way they expected. Deep down, they're not praising how you look, they're reminding you that by now you shouldn't. And that's emotional violence, even when it's spoken sweetly. Stoicism teaches us that what matters is not what others say, but how we interpret it. But don't confuse composure with resignation. It's not about staying silent to prove maturity. It's about clearly seeing what kind of words you're allowing into your mind and what real effect they have on your spirit. Too often, we accept praise without question, when in truth, it carries poison under the surface. I remember a woman I met at a family gathering. Her name was Clara, she was 69, and her gaze carried more strength than many young people I know. Someone, in a condescending tone, said to her, "Clara, you've really kept yourself well." She smiled, but later leaned over to me and said something I'll never forget. "I'm not preserved, I'm alive. I wasn't kept in formaldehyde, I'm just still me, even if I don't fit into their idea of what a woman my age should look like." That phrase made me think about how often we accept someone else's narrative, as if we should be grateful just to still be seen. True spirituality, the kind that doesn't need temples or fancy names, begins when you know you're worthy without needing external approval. And Stoicism doesn't mean pretending it doesn't hurt when someone reduces you to a number or a comparison. Stoicism is looking at yourself in the mirror and saying firmly, "My self-respect is not negotiable, even if they compliment you, even if they smile, even if they say it's out of love." There's a passage in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that says, "Do what you must without expecting applause from anyone." And you've done it. You've lived, you've endured, you've loved without conditions. You don't need anyone to tell you that, for your age, you look good. You look good because you're you, and that should be enough. So next time someone throws a compliment like that your way, you don't need to make a scene or explain yourself. Just repeat it to yourself, silently and with conviction. I'm not here to be preserved. I'm here to live with dignity. Because after 50, you don't accept just any words as praise. And anyone who speaks to you better do it with the respect you deserve. What we just explored leaves a clear lesson. Not every compliment deserves to be accepted as truth. And when you begin to pay close attention to what's being said, you also start to hear what's being hidden. That's why now it's time to talk about the second problem that's quietly ruining the lives of many people. And it's this: you're like a mother to everyone. At first, it may sound like a beautiful phrase, full of gratitude, but when you hear it through the lens of lived experience and the exhaustion you can no longer hide, something unsettling begins to surface. These kinds of compliments don't always honor your essence. Often, they erase it. Because when they call you a mother to everyone, they reduce you to a role, not a person. They praise you for what you give, but not for who you are. They honor your availability, but not your own life. And that's not recognition, it's emotional appropriation. Stoicism teaches that every human being has an inner purpose that should not be confused with others' expectations. Epictetus put it clearly, "No one can harm you without your consent." But he also reminds us that this consent isn't always verbal. Sometimes, it's the silence with which we accept roles we never chose, simply because they've been repeated to us again and again. We've been trained to please, to hold space, to care, even when our soul is worn thin. Being a mother is sacred. But when that title becomes an excuse for everyone to unload their problems on you without offering real companionship, love becomes distorted and turns into demand. Many women over 55 have been the emotional backbone of their families, long after their children moved out, after their partners stopped paying attention, after their circles stopped asking if they were okay. And then come the compliments. You're like a mother to everyone. But no one stops to ask if you, at this point in life, also need someone to care for you. These kinds of praises perpetuate a dangerous idea that your value lies in how much you give, not in who you are. And that belief shows up in your everyday life in deep ways. You struggle to set boundaries because you feel guilty. You struggle to rest because you feel like you're failing if you're not available. You struggle to say no because you're afraid of disappointing people. But the result is silent. You begin to lose space, energy, and even your sense of self. And little by little, though you don't say it out loud, you feel used, drained, and alone. On a spiritual level, this wear takes a heavy toll, because when the soul finds no reciprocity, it begins to shut down. You stop trusting so easily, you stop sharing with enthusiasm, you stop feeling like you belong. And that is not what God wants for you. If you believe in a higher consciousness, know this: you were created to live fully, not to exist solely in service to others' needs. True love never asks you to disappear in order to be worthy of it. Real respect is not born from usefulness, but from the recognition of your humanity. Seneca once said, "He who gives without measure will soon be seen as a duty, not a gift." And that's exactly what's happened to so many women who've spent years holding everyone up. Now, their children, their friends, their neighbors no longer see their giving as an act of love, but as an obligation they must continue fulfilling. And when they finally say no, when they ask for a little space, they're met with silence or reproach. That's why it's so urgent to dismantle these kinds of compliments. Not to grow cold or break bonds, but to rebuild them from a new place. One where you too are cared for, heard, and respected. You don't need to be everyone's mother. You need to be yourself, with clear boundaries, protected energy, and intact dignity. And if someone can't accept that, let them go. Because love isn't begged for and respect isn't pleaded. It's established firmly in the quiet strength of someone who's lived too much to keep pretending to be grateful for words that hurt more than they heal. When you've spent years giving without limits, there comes a point where you don't just wear yourself out. You stop recognizing yourself. That's why, after breaking down the praise that reduces you to a mother to everyone, we need to go even deeper. We've reached The third point of this video, and this is where everything starts to shift. You have admirable patience. It may sound like a tribute to your strength, but behind that phrase lies a subtle trap that's caused a lot of harm. Because when they praise your patience, it's rarely because they admire your inner balance. Most of the time, it's because they've grown used to you not complaining, to you enduring things in silence, to you tolerating without ever raising your voice. And that's not a virtue, it's a consequence. Misunderstood patience becomes a cage where others feel comfortable while you slowly fall apart on the inside. Stoicism doesn't reject patience, but it sees it as an active virtue, not passive resignation. Epictetus said, "Suffering is not a problem if you understand the purpose of the suffering." But many women have endured mistreatment, neglect, and emotional abuse with no purpose at all, just to keep the peace, to avoid being seen as difficult, to maintain the appearance of composure. What gets praised as patience is often the result of years of emotional repression. And that's not healthy, fair, or stoic. This is where a practical strategy comes in, something you can start applying today. Begin to identify the difference between the silence that protects your peace and the silence that hides your pain. Not everything you keep quiet makes you wise. Sometimes what you keep inside makes you sick, and recognizing that difference can mark the beginning of real change. How do you do it? Every time you feel like you're swallowing something out of patience, take a pause and ask yourself, is this an act of self-respect or fear of conflict? If the answer is fear, then you need to speak up. Maybe not by yelling, maybe not in that exact moment, but you need to speak. Because every time you stay silent about your pain, you teach others that nothing has to change. And every time you do that, you drift a little further away from yourself. Picture a house. For years, the roof leaks, the walls crack, the pipes make noise, but you decide it's better not to bother the architect, not to complain, not to be a problem. Time passes. One day, the house is no longer livable. The same thing happens to you. Misused patience turns your body into a house full of hidden damage. It doesn't show right away, but you feel it. And if you don't do something, it collapses from within, even if everything looks fine on the outside. If these words are resonating with you so far, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. This space exists to say what many don't dare to, and to walk with you as you reclaim your voice. Tell me in the comments which country you're watching from and write this phrase if it speaks to you. My silence will not be misunderstood. Because there are still several important lessons ahead, and I promise the last one will be the most uncomfortable, but also the most freeing. Stay with me. This journey is just beginning. At this point in the journey, we've already seen how certain compliments can turn into chains disguised as flowers. Staying quiet out of patience, accepting the role of universal mother, allowing yourself to be praised with condescension, all of it builds a life that appears serene on the outside, but is deeply exhausting within. And now, it's time to face another kind of praise that, while it seems to admire you, actually ends up minimizing your exhaustion. We've reached the fourth point of this video. I wish I had your strength. This phrase, often said by family, friends, or even strangers, has deeply unfair roots. They're not telling you they admire your spirit. They're telling you they won't take responsibility for your pain. Because behind those words isn't genuine recognition. It's a comfortable way to avoid the weight of what you've lived through. By calling you strong, people justify their absence, their indifference, their lack of care. They assume you don't need support, that you can handle everything, that you're already used to it. And the worst part is that over time, you start to believe it too. That's the common trap I want you to notice, confusing strength with obligation. It starts with compliments, continues with responsibilities no one else wants to carry, and ends in a life where no one asks how you're doing, because you've got this. But no one can handle everything, especially not when strength becomes the only language you're allowed to speak. Stoicism does not promote silent sacrifice as a way of life. It values composure and resilience, yes, but not at the cost of your mental health, your body, or your dignity. Seneca said it bluntly, "It's not brave to suffer without reason, it's brave to walk away from pointless suffering." The real damage of this mental trap is that it disconnects you from yourself. You become so good at surviving that you forget how to live. You don't ask for help because you're afraid of seeming weak. You don't express pain because you're afraid of being a burden. You don't allow yourself to rest because you've been told so many times that you're strong. You're terrified of breaking that image. But that image isn't yours. It was built by those who benefited from your silence. And if you don't start dismantling it, you'll end up living as a character instead of your truth. The consequences show up in your body and soul. You start to carry illnesses that could have been avoided if you had learned to let go. You feel alone, but you don't say it. You go entire days without a single call, and still you keep smiling because you were taught that this is maturity. But maturity isn't resignation. Maturity is knowing when to push forward and when to pause, when to be strong and when to say, "Today, I can't do this anymore." And this is where deep spirituality comes in, the kind that doesn't need rituals or temples, the kind you practice in the intimacy of your own awareness. Ask yourself, who told you that you had to be unbreakable? Who convinced you that you weren't allowed to let it out? What part of you is longing for someone to see you, not as strong, but simply as human? That question opens the door to true emotional freedom, because it's not about abandoning strength, it's about redirecting it. No longer to hold everyone else up, no longer to endure everything, but to start choosing for yourself, from yourself, for your own sake. So the next time someone says, "I wish I had your strength," don't take it as a compliment. Ask yourself, what part of me is being exploited in the name of that strength? And decide if you want to keep giving that part away with no reciprocity. Because life doesn't ask you to be invulnerable, it asks you to be real. And that, more than any other praise, is what will restore the peace you truly deserve. We've arrived at the fifth point in this journey, and it touches a wound few dare to name, but many have deeply felt you really know how to be alone. At first glance, it sounds like admiration, as if being comfortable in your own company were a rare achievement. But if you take a moment to really feel what that phrase stirs in you, you'll realize that it's often not said to honor you, it's said to justify someone's absence. Behind those words, what they're really saying is, "I'm not responsible for your loneliness, you can handle that." It's a polite way to wash their hands of you, to avoid real connection, to carry on with their lives without the burden of your need for affection, company, or attention. They turn you into an example so they don't have to call, don't have to visit, don't have to ask if you're okay. And the most dangerous part? You start using that phrase as a shield. "I'm fine alone. I don't need anyone. I've gotten used to it." But getting used to something is not the same as choosing it, and resignation is not the same as healing. When you accept this compliment without questioning it, you step into an emotional trap that drains your vital energy. Loneliness stops being a sacred, chosen space and becomes a clean, well-decorated cell where you've locked the door yourself to keep others out. The result? You appear strong on the outside, but inside, a quiet sadness builds up. One that doesn't scream, but shows in long silences, in conversations with objects, in days without a single human voice, in tears that come for no obvious reason. That's the real consequence of allowing others to praise your ability to be alone when deep down, no one should have to learn to live without affection, without touch, without a glance that says, "You still matter." Now, this doesn't get fixed with sweet phrases or empty hope. It's not about convincing yourself that things will get better if you just think positively. It starts with an uncomfortable truth. People don't always come back, and often they don't because it's easier to believe you don't need them. So the change must begin with you, not by expecting anything from anyone, but by making radical decisions about your own worth. Break the narrative that loneliness is your destiny. Break the idea that emotional independence means you don't deserve companionship. And above all, break the belief that needing something makes you weak. Stoicism doesn't reject solitude. It honors it as a space for clarity, but never as punishment. Marcus Aurelius spoke about finding stillness within, but he also said that human beings are made for connection, for community, for sincere exchange. So if you're alone today, let it be by choice, not by abandonment disguised as praise. If you decide to dwell in your inner world, let it be because you've cultivated it, not because others have avoided it. And if someday someone tells you they admire your ability to be alone, look at them calmly and say, "I know how to be alone, but I wasn't born to stay alone for the convenience of others." That phrase, spoken from your center, marks a turning point. Don't beg for attention, but don't allow absence to be celebrated as a virtue either, because you too deserve arms that hold you, eyes that seek you, and voices that ask if you're okay. Not out of need, out of right, out of dignity, out of self-love. After exploring loneliness disguised as virtue, it becomes impossible not to take a harder look at all the so-called compliments we've been accepting, when in truth, they're ways to justify abandonment or emotionally tame us. We've reached the 6th point in this video, and it's one of the most subtle yet corrosive. It's so nice that you still have dreams. At first, it sounds like an encouraging phrase, but if you listen closely to the tone, the patronizing pause, the word "still" that slips in like a soft dagger, you'll realize they're not really celebrating you. They're politely putting you on the sidelines. It's a graceful way of reminding you that your desires are no longer a priority, that your urge to try something new, different, or bold is seen as a quirky whim from someone who should be quiet, just grateful for what remains. Take a moment and try this. Imagine you tell someone you want to learn a new language, travel on your own, take painting classes, or start writing. Watch their reaction. Really listen. Do they respond with genuine excitement, or with that slightly amused tone that says, "How sweet that you still dream"? Because that's the reality many older women face. They're not forbidden from dreaming. They're tolerated. And that tolerance is just another form of exclusion. It's like being allowed a seat at the table but without a voice or a vote. Your dreams are treated as decoration, not as direction. And over time, that starts to eat away at you. Life doesn't stop after 50, but the world begins to act like you're no longer allowed to want something new. They tell you in 1,000 ways, "You've already lived enough. Be grateful for what you have. At your age, you shouldn't be making big changes." And if you're not alert, if you're not firmly rooted in yourself, you begin to repeat those phrases without even realizing it. You say them while you cook, while you sweep, while you ride the bus alone. And one day, you realize you can't remember the last time you dreamed without needing someone's approval. That's the deepest wound, not the unfulfilled dreams, but the ones you stopped having out of fear that people would laugh. Stoicism doesn't ask us to live without desire. It teaches us to have clear desires, ruled by reason and guided by purpose, not by whim. Marcus Aurelius didn't stop writing, reflecting, or leading his empire, even when he knew his time was short, because he understood that what defines a person isn't their age, it's the direction they choose every day. So if someone tells you it's sweet that you still have dreams, don't take it as a compliment. Take it as a warning. Because there's nothing childish about wanting more, trying again, or starting fresh. What's truly childish is believing that maturity should be lived on pause. This isn't about making empty promises. Not every dream will come true. Some will remain as intention, as inner fire, as quiet motivation. But even then, a woman who dreams and acts from her desire is worth more than one who surrenders for fear of looking foolish. If you're stuck in a routine, if you haven't tried anything new in years, if you've convinced yourself that your time has passed, I want you to ask yourself this. How many decisions are you making from conviction? And how many from inertia? Because that answer defines whether you age in resignation or in clarity. Your time isn't measured in clocks, it's measured in will. And as long as that will exists, don't let anyone else decide how valid your dreams are. Because dreaming isn't a luxury reserved for the young. It's a right of every living soul. And if the world doesn't get that, let it keep spinning without you. You're not here to settle. You're here to keep moving, even if the road is lonely. Because every step you take from your own desire, even if no one claps, is an act of redemption. And that doesn't need permission, just courage. If you've made it this far, you know this journey hasn't been easy. We've uncovered words once taken as compliments, and now you recognize them for what they truly are. Warnings in disguise. In the last chapter, we talked about the right to keep dreaming, even when the world acts like your time has passed. And that brings us to the final and most dangerous of all those phrases that sound well-intentioned but slowly wear you down without you even noticing. We've reached the 7th point of this video, and it's time to confront a phrase that sounds heavenly but is often a sentence of emotional exhaustion. You're always there for everyone. You're an angel. It sounds like pure praise. But if you look closely, you'll see it's another form of emotional servitude. They turn you into a symbol, a constant presence, a forever available source of support. You're no longer a woman with boundaries, with good days and bad, with the right to say no. You're the angel, the one who never fails, who holds it all together without asking for anything, who always shows up when others disappear. And if one day you get tired, if you pull back, they look at you with disappointment, because angels supposedly don't get tired. This narrative is destructive because it forces an identity onto you that slowly consumes you. You stop taking care of yourself because there's always someone else who needs something. You stop resting because there's always an emotional emergency to solve. You stop saying no because you don't want to disappoint the image others have built of you. And the most tragic part, you stop recognizing yourself because you were taught that your value lies in what you give, in how you help, in how you save others. But no one taught you how to ask for help without feeling weak. No one prepared you to say enough without feeling guilty. Stoicism speaks of living life as an act of responsibility, and that responsibility isn't just toward others, it's first and foremost toward yourself. Seneca said, "Life becomes heavy when you stop living for yourself." And that's what many women have done for decades, carried everyone else while forgetting themselves. But there comes a time when your body stops responding, when your soul screams what your mouth won't say, when your routine feels like punishment. And that's when invisible fatigue shows up, the kind no one sees, but it follows you everywhere. It can't be cured with more sleep or a vacation. It's healed through decisions. This is where you need to be brutally honest with yourself. How many people have you supported who don't even ask how you're doing today? How many times have you said yes when everything in you was screaming no? How many times were you called an angel just so they wouldn't have to take responsibility? Here's the truth. You weren't born to carry everyone. You were born to live. And if someone can't accept that, let them go. Your life is not for sale. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Your time is not unlimited. Transformation begins when you stop making excuses to stay the same, when you stop accepting hollow compliments that only validate your self-sacrifice, when you look in the mirror and recognize a woman who has given too much and who's finally ready to reclaim herself. Because no one's going to give you back what you've lost. No one's going to take care of you if you don't start doing it first. Don't wait for your body to collapse to stop. Don't wait for the loneliness to become unbearable to admit you can't keep going. Today is the day to stop being everyone's angel and start being the owner of your own path. Because if you don't take control now, the compliment becomes your cage, and you weren't born for that. If you've made it this far, it's not out of curiosity. It's because something inside you lit up as you listened to these words. Because deep down, you know that many of the compliments you've received weren't genuine recognition. They were disguised forms of control, manipulation, or indifference. And the hardest part isn't that others said them. It's that for years, you learned to thank them, to stay silent, to accept it as normal. But today, you're no longer at a stage in life where you have to keep accepting what erases you. Today, you're exactly where you need to be to break those chains, even if they come wrapped in soft words. This isn't a comforting message. I'm not here to tell you everything will be okay without you making a choice. I'm here to tell you it's now or never. Staying in the same pattern is a decision, and demanding respect is a decision too. Because no one is going to rescue you if you don't first decide to leave the narrative that says your worth depends on being available, smiling, and grateful for emotional crumbs. I see you for making it this far. Not everyone does. Not everyone has the courage to face their story with clear eyes and an awakened mind. If something in this resonated with you today, if you realize these phrases have been part of your life more than you'd like to admit, drop your country in the comments and write the phrase, "My respect begins today." That'll be your sign of commitment, not to me, but to yourself. Because no one else can make that change for you. I'm Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This space doesn't exist to entertain or to sugarcoat reality. It exists to tell you what no one else dares to, with respect, with clarity, and without filters. We don't sell easy hope here. We plant direction, dignity, and truth for women who have chosen to wake up. If you feel this message truly spoke to you, subscribe and become part of this community of women who are done being invisible, who no longer want to live justifying their existence, who know that respect isn't begged for, it's upheld. Share this video with someone who needs to stop accepting compliments that actually hurt, because sometimes a clear message is more powerful than 1,000 pretty words. And if you still have questions, if something you heard left you thinking, don't go just yet. I'm leaving 2 more videos right here that can help you keep walking this path of clarity and inner strength. This conversation isn't over, it's just beginning. I'll see you there.